Chapter 6 Initiation. Halima was prepared for initiation into the Abaka and marriage to the king. She was sent to kneel in the hall set aside for women of the city, where the old women instructed her in the ways and history of the Abaka and told her how a wife was to behave. They spiced up their lessons with tales of wives who had been disloyal, disobedient, jealous of their co-wives, or had otherwise gone astray, and the terrible fates these erring women had encountered. They told her of the origin of women and the secrets of the womb, of herbs that ensured her babies would be born strong and healthy. Halima recognized much of what they told her from her own initiation into womanhood in Kali, but many of the secrets they divulged were new to her. In time, the old women told her she must learn how to pleasure her husband. Halima insisted, "I've already been taught how to please a man. I'm no child." The eldest of the women smirked and pointed between Halima's legs. "Your little kitten will be split in two by one of our men, Outlander. Listen, and maybe you'll live through your wedding night." Halima's instruction in the laws and rituals of the Abaka was the responsibility of the Oba Panin, the senior woman of the royal lineage. She was Shamari's grandmother, a stately, white-haired woman with a curiously unlined face. Halima also learned of the system by which the Abaka were governed. The kingdom was divided into a dozen wards, each of which was occupied by members of a different lineage group, whose members shared a common ancestor. Each ward had its own shrine and Obat Kapun, a priest. The male head of each clan, the Abusa Panin, was responsible for the welfare of the group and for settling family disputes. He also held a stool in the Council of Elders. This august body met regularly to advise the king on important matters, such as when to wage war and when to forge agreements with neighbors. Anyone in the kingdom who felt their own clan leader had treated them unfairly could ask for a hearing before the Council of Elders. It was the court of final appeal for all family disputes. With a unanimous vote, it had the power to remove an unjust clan leader, or even a tyrannical king. The Council of Elders was tremendously powerful. The only greater body still was a Council of Councils, made up of the leaders of each of the kingdoms spread across the mountain. But this great body was convened only in times of tremendous crisis, perhaps twice in a century. The training of Halima was complete after 1 month, and the day came for her initiation into the Abaka in an ancient ceremony that went back to the dawn of time, when men still feared thunder and dark. The women took from Halima all her garments and possessions, all that she owned, even the sea turtle pendant she reluctantly surrendered to them. When she was naked as the morning she was born, they shaved her long and delicate braids till her head was shiny and smooth, and sheared away the kinky triangle of hair between her thighs. Halima shivered. It was as though they were preparing her for burial. Ominously, the women coated her from head to foot with white clay, the color of death. They painted her body with strange spiraling symbols, a circle around her navel and a red dot on her forehead, the symbol of the third eye. She was carried to the great hall. The room was full of choking smoke from the roaring fire in the middle of the hall, amid the stools of the ancestors. Halima was made to squat before the fire and watch, as one by one each of her possessions was tossed in and ravaged by the fire. A slow, mournful drum beat, and the voices sang out of the smoky darkness. The chief Mugwe, the blessing giver, pranced forward and stood above her, wearing a fearsome, skull-like mask from which vulture feathers sprang in all directions. He danced around her, swinging a sword over her head, taunting her to flinch, so close that Halima felt the cool breeze on her bare scalp, but she did not budge. The priest touched the point of the blade against her breast, and then lunged forward as if to plunge the blade in, but still she did not flinch. Finally, the Mugwe dropped the blade. He raised his arms aloft and shouted, "Who invites this woman onto our soil?" "I do." A voice rang out of the swirling smoke. "Come forward, then," shouted the Mugway. Rashida emerged from the smoke, dressed only in a crimson loincloth. In her hand, she carried a huge ceremonial goblet fashioned from a human skull. She knelt facing Halima and passed her the cup. Halima brought the goblet to her lips. The frothing black liquid bubbled and churned, and foul yellow fumes rose from it. If any liquid ever looked and smelled like poison, then this was it. She hesitated and looked into Rashida's steely eyes. "Drink it," Rashida whispered gently. Halima grimaced and took a gulp of the liquid. It raked down her throat like a spoonful of nails. She gasped, trying to scream, and keeled over as everything vanished into a cloudy purple haze. For a few moments, nothing. Then Halima was racing through the air, seeing nothing but blue sky above her. 6 strong men ran, carrying her. A funeral dirge was playing, and the women wailed. "The Outlander is dead. Let us all weep for her, taken before her time." "But I'm not dead," Halima thought, struggling to move. She found she was frozen stiff as a mummy. She tried to open her mouth and scream, but no sound came forth. "Am I dead in truth?" Halima thought in horror. Flower petals fluttered onto her bare body as children skipped along, throwing lilies on her. "Shamari, where are you? Rescue me," she thought. She saw her friends, Tumpy and the other serving women, swaying in grief and singing. And yes, there was Shamari, weeping with the others and beating his chest dramatically as her body passed. "No, no, no," Halima tried to scream. Halima felt herself being lowered. She saw the gray walls of a cave-like hole surround her as she descended. She made one last effort, and she saw stone being rolled over the grave, extinguishing the light. She heard herself cry, "I am alive!" But incredibly, no one paid any attention. The stone covered her, and she was in absolute darkness. "I must be dead. I must be dead and buried," Halima thought in terror. She lay still, feeling sweat gushing from her pores. Her heart pumped in terror, and she felt her bladder let loose. Then she understood. "I am alive. I am alive, and this is my initiation." She lay in the pitch black, reason slowly overcoming her fear. "They gave me a drug that gives me all the semblance of death, but I'm alive." She lay in the dark, dank hole, a strange calm coming over her. The silence and perfect blackness were somehow soothing. After an hour or so, Halima felt herself able to blink, then felt a tingling in her fingers and toes as life returned to her body. She drew in a deep breath and found that air was seeping into the hole from cracks around the edge of the cover stone. "They will come for me," Halima told herself, lying on her back, staring up at nothing. Interminably, the hours passed, with no sight and no sound. Soon, in the black, her imagination began to play tricks. Strange images danced before her blind eyes. She saw the past, her mother, Nima, Badango. She saw Shamari, laughing. She imagined him on top of her in a sweaty embrace, thrusting into her and telling her he loved her. She saw a rush of trees as if she were flying high among the branches. She looked down on a giant ape woman, covered with hair, carrying a baby on her back, wading through a primordial lake. Now she herself was the giant woman, and she was on her back, her belly before her, swollen with child. She was sweating, heaving, ready to give birth. The boulder was pulled away, and a blinding white light poured into the hole. Outside she heard the triumphant blare of horns and the crash of cymbals. Strong arms reached in and hauled her out of the hole. They propped her up, and she stood on wobbly legs, as weak as a newborn. Her eyes, burned by the light, were shut tight, but she heard the chanting of pride and joy and the stamping of feet as hundreds of people danced around her. They shouted, "We of the Abaka praise the spirit of the mountain for giving us this beautiful girl child." Halima felt jug after jug full of hot water pouring over her, washing the stinking white muck from her. She blinked through the water and saw the smiling faces of Rashida and the other wives of Shamari and all the people of the city. Old Watande himself, head of the Council of Elders, grinned at her and gave her a welcoming hug, as did each of the crowd in turn. So it was that Halima came to be initiated into the Abaka. It was the happiest day of her life. She had never felt before such a rush of complete acceptance. More happiness awaited her, for now she could be married to Shamari, whom she loved deeply. Halima's happiness, though, would be tainted with pain if she knew of events taking place miles away in her homeland, Kali. 4 months earlier, Halima's father, Babatunde the Good, had gone to join his ancestors. Some say that he had died of old age. Others whispered that an assassin had used poison to take his life. Before the ashes of his funeral pyre were cold, the ruler of the people of the snake, King Aligbadi, and his troops marched into Kali. For deceitful King Aligbadi had told the world that he had married Princess Halima and that she had died in an attack by the Zimbai. He claimed that the throne of Kali was rightfully his by inheritance, and no one had the strength to challenge his claim. So now it was King Aligbadi who sat on the ancient throne of Kali. With the counsel of Masomakalai, his cunning slave general, he was slowly but surely building an empire of incredible strength. All this Halima would learn only much later. For now, she enjoyed the bliss of ignorance.